So, as mentioned before, there were a couple of different ways to approach the workflow. But after you've done the majority of the adjustment of the image, then going into the shape panel would be the next logical choice to do. So, what we're going to go ahead and do is we can see from the adjust panel that we've done a bunch of adjustments. If I was to go in here and open up white balance and exposure and high dynamic range, you can see that it has been some definite adjustments to the shot. Even a lot right here. If you notice right here, it looks like somebody overexposed this photo when he shot it. So once we've got that going, we move to the shape panel, and the shape panel is only broken into like basically four little different things. Um, Down below here is a the grid controls for showing where the grids will be if you want to have an overlay of a grid. Um, so this just helps you see what grid is on there when you're actually working on an image. As you're adjusting different things, the grid sometimes shows up. So while that grid is showing up, it tells you that you can go in and have it have an outline of orange or have an outline of red on the different colors depending on what you want to do. So we'll just close that up. That's more of a detail item. Um, but before we move forward, I want to point out one thing real quickly. Right now, I'm working on a laptop, and as I'm recording this, you can see that there is a lot of space taken up by the way that Capture One is laid out. So if I want a little bit more real estate for my image as I'm looking at it, I want to close the browser. So what I can do here is I can go up to View, and I can click right here where it has the check mark next to the browser, and I can go ahead and close that by doing that. I can also use the keystroke Command B to do that. And if you notice, when you go back in there, Command G will get rid of the viewer, B the browser, T the tools on the left hand side, and so on and so forth. So depending on how you want to work, this is a way to basically give yourself a little bit more room to work. And I'm also going to go ahead and slide this over and make the image a little bit bigger. Now I'm at the absolute height that I can be here. So this works perfectly for me. If I wanted to get rid of the toolbar at the top, I could also do that um, if for some reason I didn't want to see these. Um, so there's the grid control that we were talking about. I press the grid there. You can see the overlay of the grid. And obviously, you guys can go in and do some custom grids and change the colors of the grid. For example, if I want it to be yellow, in this instance, it would blend in with the building. But I can go in and change it to different colors. I tend to like to use white as a default because it tends to show up on most images unless I'm on a high key image, and then I might choose black. Okay, so I'm going to leave the crop alone because we're going to go ahead and let it kind of crop after we've adjusted the image. So first we need to go in and figure out if the image needs to be flipped. In this instance, we're not going for some sort of artistic image. We're actually going for more of a realistic appearance, so we're not going to flip it. Right now, the horizon line is actually pretty stable. And if you guys kind of look, the up and down line on the overlay of the grid right here shows me that that line right there shows me that I am actually pretty darn straight with this image. But the rest of the image has keystoning. And there are some other curves to it, but it has to do with the angle that I'm at in relation to the way the concrete on the ground has been laid and stuff. So I'm not going to worry so much about that. So we're going to go ahead and leave the rotation and flip alone. I could go in if I felt the need to adjust the rotation. I can go ahead and swing it one way or the other, but I find that it is so strong that it kicks it up so fast that I tend to like to just leave it at zero and then see what happens as I do the other adjustments and then go back and kind of fine tune that. So now I'm going to go ahead and go to guides. Now I could press auto to see what that does for me. And it does an okay job, but it makes the image look just a tad too square in my opinion. So I tend to like to go a little bit less than what automatic would do. So now I'm going to go ahead and go in and I can go ahead and slide this down to 50% and see what that does when I go in and click auto. It may not go as extreme. And that wasn't bad. You see, that was a little bit more of a nuanced appearance as opposed to the 100%. So you can play around with this as you're working. And it will also go too far. So the default was 100. We'll leave it there. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and use the tool here to draw the different lines around. Now you notice that when you press this, it goes in and you will see that some lines show up. I'm going to turn off the grid so it's not competing with it. And these lines are just like kind of like looking at existing lines that it thinks that you might want to adjust, and automatically choosing them. And if I go ahead and press enter, it should just go ahead and move those. But if I don't like that, then what I can do is I can go ahead and move these around and then figure out exactly what the lines are that I want to adjust. I can use this to adjust through here, kind of keeping like a four-way adjustment, and do that. And then once I do it, boom, it straightens it out. Or I can use the single lines, and that's the way I'm going to actually do this. So I'm going to go ahead and reset the lines. All right, so the lines are normal, straight up. I'm going to go ahead and place it on this line here of the building and use that as my first line. And then for this, I don't want to go too extreme, so I'm going to go ahead and grab this line of the other building along the siding there. And then once I do that, it should go ahead and execute it once I press the apply button in the center. And now it has adjusted it. And you notice, and once I do that, it also crops the image based on what I did. Now, if I find that the crop is too much, I can always go back and undo it. Right now it's trying to keep the proportion of my image, so that's why it has cropped the way that it did. I can go back in, and like I said, after the fact, I go ahead and say done. Then if I go to the crop tool real quick, up here to crop, I can get the ratio to unconstrained, and then go ahead and click on the crop tool itself, and then drag this over a little bit, and drag this up just a touch, just get a little bit more sky in there, and voila, now I have it looking like this. Now, because I did straighten based on this line, the telephone pole looks a little out of whack also. So if I don't like that, I can go back to the keystone panel, click on the tool itself, and I can say, okay, I don't like the line straightening there. I actually want to do it on the telephone pole, so I'm going to go ahead and move this over to the telephone pole. And then once I do that, I'll click apply. And it's still a little on the wonky side, so it kind of comes down to what you like better. So I'm going to leave it here. And that's pretty good. The only other thing you can keep in mind is that you've also got lens corrections, which also affect the appearance of the effect that you would have done if you've been fixing this. So what I would do now is, I'll go ahead and click apply. Oops, no, let me undo that. Let me go ahead and get this back over here. It does have a little bit of a mind of its own at times. All right, so now I've got it back to the way I want it. I'm going to go ahead and do the crop as I've done it. Oops, oops, oops. Mind of its own. All right. So there's the crop of the image. Now, once again, there are some strangeness to it, so if I feel that there's too much, you can always go back and fix it. You can also use the sliders instead, so if you feel that there's a little bit of a skew that's a little bit off, you can kind of pull this back and forth and see what this does to the image. Obviously, you can go really dramatic if you go too far, so you want to go in and just skew it a little bit and see what it does. In this instance, skew isn't doing anything for me. Um, the vertical has been pulled forward, but you can also go in and out with that. So for example, if I go back to the guides and I go in here and I undo everything that the guides have had done, and then I go into crop and I undo the crop. Now we're back to the original image. In this instance, I could go back in to the keystone panel, do the sliders, and I could pull the vertical forward or backward by just sliding this a little bit. And that might just do the straightening that I need without having to use the actual tool. So that's done a fairly good job. And now all I need to do is maybe just a hint of rotation. So on the rotation, I might go in and creep in there and just use, I'm going to highlight the number, hold down the shift key and use the up and down arrows to see if I can find a rotation that I like. Because I find the slider is very powerful when you go too fast. And so maybe something about like this. So it's very nuanced. You can really kind of get this just right the way you want. These are going to keystone out that way because they do. And now this is a much stronger image. And if I want to see a before and after, I can click this and you guys can see that. Before, it was a lot more keystoned, and after it's not. So it definitely changes a lot with the image. All right, so there you go. That's the whole shape panel for you.